A wild leopard returned to the village after years in the jungle. But instead of attacking, he walked up to an old dog and did something no one could believe. What happened next brought the entire village to tears. The morning mist still clung to the treetops as the village of Rampur slowly came to life. Roosters crowed, smoke curled from cooking fires, and the rhythm of another day began. But just beyond the village edge, near the forest line, something unusual stirred. Mita, a gentle black and tan mother dog known to everyone in the village, was barking, loudly and urgently. She paced along the tall grass, ears alert, tail rigid. At first, the villagers thought she had spotted a wild animal, maybe a monkey or even a jackal. But Mita's bark wasn't aggressive. It was desperate. Curious, a few men followed her. She darted ahead, then stopped and looked back, waiting for them. After a short hike through the brush, they heard it. Faint, pitiful, almost lost in the wind, a tiny whimper. There, tucked beneath a thorn bush, lay a leopard cub, no more than a few weeks old. His body was trembling. His eyes, barely open, were filled with fear and pain. There was no sign of his mother, just dried blood nearby and claw marks on the trees. A territorial fight, perhaps. The villagers hesitated. A wild animal, especially a predator, was dangerous, even at this age. But Mita didn't wait. She lay beside the cub, gently nudging it with her nose, licking its wounds as if it were her own. In that moment, the villagers didn't see a predator and a pet. They saw a mother answering a silent cry. The villagers were torn. Bringing a wild leopard cub into their homes was unheard of, but leaving him behind meant certain death. In the end, it wasn't their decision. Mita had already made it. She refused to leave the cub's side, growling low whenever someone tried to separate them. So they wrapped the tiny cub in a soft shawl and brought him into the village. A corner of Mita's sleeping area was cleared, and with her own litter of puppies already suckling, she welcomed one more without hesitation. The cub, named Balu by the village children, began nursing alongside his adopted siblings. The transformation was almost immediate. His tiny frame gained strength. The tremble in his limbs faded. His eyes brightened. He wasn't just surviving, he was healing. And Mita? She didn't treat him any differently. She cleaned him, curled around him at night, and nudged him gently when he wandered too far. Animal experts who visited the village shook their heads in disbelief. This won't last, they said. He's a wild predator by nature. But the villagers didn't see a threat. They saw something pure, unspoken love. And Mita? She didn't care what species he was. To her, Balu was simply her baby. As days turned into weeks, the unlikely family grew closer than anyone imagined. Balu, once frail and frightened, became energetic and playful, often seen tumbling over his adoptive puppy siblings, batting at their tails with clumsy paws. At first, the puppies were confused by his spotted coat and sharp little claws, but soon, they accepted him like one of their own. Mita was always nearby, watchful, patient, and endlessly gentle. When Balu bit too hard during play, she gave him a soft nip in return, the same discipline she gave her puppies. When he grew restless, she curled around him until he fell asleep, her heartbeat calming the wildness in him. Villagers would stop to watch them. This mother dog and the predator cub snuggled together in the afternoon sun. Children would giggle and whisper, "Look, he thinks he's a puppy." One afternoon, a traveler snapped a photo of Mita curled around Balu, both fast asleep, their breathing perfectly in sync. That image spread like wildfire across social media. But even with all the attention, one thing remained unchanged: Mita's love. She didn't see a future predator. She saw the cub who had once cried in the forest. And he saw the only mother he ever knew. As months passed, Balu grew, faster, stronger, and wilder. His playful nips became too sharp, his pounces heavier. The puppies, now young dogs themselves, began to keep a cautious distance. Mita still loved him, but even she began to sense a change. Her little cub was no longer little. Wildlife officials, monitoring the situation from afar, finally made the decision. "It's time," they said gently. "He belongs in the wild now." The village was heartbroken. No one more than Mita. The morning of Balu's departure was quiet. A special team arrived with a tranquilizing dart, not to harm him, but to transport him safely. As they prepared, Balu paced nervously, sensing something was off. Mita sat beside him, her tail still, her eyes calm. Before they sedated him, Mita stepped forward and licked his face, slow, deliberate, maternal. She nuzzled into his neck. The way she had the first night, she brought him warmth. The dart went in. Balu's eyes grew heavy. He didn't fight. He looked at her one last time as if asking, "Will I ever see you again?" And she, silently, with one final lick, seemed to answer, "I'll always be with you." Time moved on as it always does. Mita's puppies were adopted one by one. The home that once echoed with playful yips and pounces grew quiet. Mita, now graying around the muzzle, spent her days lying in her usual spot beneath the neem tree, gazing toward the forest as if waiting for something or someone. The villagers often spoke of Balu. Some believed he had forgotten them. Others hoped he was thriving in the wild. Wildlife officers confirmed sightings of a healthy male leopard in the reserve, strong, dominant, and territorial. But they could never say for sure if it was Balu. Still, Mita seemed to know. Some evenings, she would perk up suddenly, ears twitching, nose in the air, then sigh and settle back down. Meanwhile, deep within the jungle, a leopard stalked silently through the trees. He was fierce, feared by others, and master of his domain. But sometimes, when the stars were high and the world was quiet, he would stop and sit beneath a tree, looking toward the horizon. Something would flicker in his golden eyes, not wildness, but memory, a mother's scent, a warm touch, a place he could never return to, but never forget. One quiet night, the village dogs began to bark. It wasn't their usual warning bark. This was different, urgent, confused. When the sun rose the next morning, villagers stepped outside to find massive paw prints embedded in the soft mud near the edge of the forest, larger than any they'd seen before. The tracks led straight to Mita's resting spot and then disappeared back into the trees. Wildlife officials reviewed footage from motion sensor cameras placed around the forest line. The images were grainy but unmistakable. A large male leopard had returned to the outskirts of the village. Not hunting, not prowling, just watching. When Mita woke that morning, something in her stirred. Her old bones moved slower now, her vision not as sharp, but her nose lifted to the breeze. She sniffed the air deeply, paused, and then wagged her tail once, slow and steady. Later that evening, as the light faded into gold, a shadow appeared at the edge of the trees. He moved with the grace of a predator, but there was no malice in his eyes, only recognition. It was Balu. After all those years, after all that distance, he had come back, not as a cub, but as her son. The villagers gathered quietly, watching from behind trees and rooftops, unsure of what would happen next. A full-grown leopard had returned to their land, yet there was no fear in the air, only awe. Balu stepped cautiously into the clearing. Mita, lying under the neem tree as she always did, lifted her head. Her eyes locked with his. There was no bark, no growl, just stillness. Then, unbelievably, Balu lowered himself slowly to the ground and crept forward on his belly, like a cub returning to his mother. When he reached her, he nuzzled her gently under the chin, pressing his face into her fur. Mita responded the only way she knew how. She licked his face. Tears welled in the villagers' eyes. Some clasped their hands to their mouths. A moment that defied logic, biology, and even nature itself was unfolding right before them. One of the wildlife officers, unable to believe it, captured the entire scene on video. The footage went viral within hours. Experts called it unprecedented. Others called it miraculous. But those who had seen their bond from the beginning knew exactly what it was. Not instinct, not confusion. It was love, pure, lasting, and unforgettable. Like, share, and subscribe for more real stories that remind us of the love this world still holds.